Subscribe and hit the bell icon to never miss another update from India Forums.
And for me to be immersed in music like that, and the kind of music that was played in that era and performed, I think that was very interesting, and that got a really interesting perspective on how I would treat Celine.
We, as listeners of the story or watchers of cinema, we make those characters iconic. But the characters themselves, when they're going through their lives, they don't consider themselves iconic.
So how was your experience with history as a subject during your school days?
Awful.
Seriously?
I think I just missed history classes.
Yeah.
I used to be in my school band singing, bunking classes.
I used to enjoy history in a way when I used to watch it in cartoons.
I didn't listen much in history class, to be very honest, because it's so much about dates and
Man, I hate dates.
kind of it becomes dry quite often. Hate dates.
अजीम शान शहंशाह और हमारी अनारकली और उन सब के साथ मुगल सल्तनत की आन बान और शान हमारे साथ है आज Z5 के अपकमिंग शो ताज के कास्ट मेंबर्स. Welcome to India Forums.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So starting with it, the theme of the show, as we have seen, it's all about the royalty, the Mughal Empire and everything. And पहले ऐसे बहुत सारे shows, series, सब कुछ बने हैं on the same adaptations and everything. So how do you feel this show will be relevant for today's generation and for the people of today who have like already taken lot of content in different stages?
Who do you want to answer?
Anyone?
Start with the woman first then.
Yeah.
Nice. Throw me under the bus. So I feel, I know it's a part of history. We've seen many adaptations of it. It's very famous stories that have been read and reread and written and rewritten and re-narrated over time. But I feel, at the core of it, this whole story of succession and betrayal and love, and it's basically a very epic family drama. And that's a genre, and that is the kind of story that is always interesting. And I think Taj looks at this entire story of succession like that. So there's so many layers, there's so many different personalities, there's so much happening in it that I feel it's always interesting. Also, I think when you have a group of people like we have for this particular show, our director Ronald, our writers William and Simon, our DOP Simon Temple, it was a joint production, Jason and Z5 and Contillo. It's a very diverse group of people, and the people who actually envisioned the show and wanted to make it were the people who wrote it and the director. So it comes from it, like there's existing information that a lot of us have, but this is kind of like a retelling of it, and that in itself I think made it interesting for us because you're dealing with fresh material, in many ways, and also adaptations of characters and how characters are fleshed out is kind of different. So that made it exciting for us, and I hope that for the audience also, it will be something to
Also,
get into.
I feel at the core of it, like eventually it's like a father who's desperate to sort of give his empire and searching desperately for the rightful heir. And something that he's so beautifully and so massively built over the years, and he became like Akbar in this case became king when he was 13 years old. He was at war when he was 11. So the fact that like he's gone through so much himself, and even like I don't know if like many people know this, but like Akbar had many sons who at birth died, and then after him going to the saint Salim Chishti, and like how he basically was so desperate to have like children, and then when he said that you're gonna have 3 sons and they're gonna live longer than your previous sons. And all of that when it happened, so he was all the more careful and wanted and put all the 3 sons in situations which was trying, which was it really so it's like just any other family. I feel like the father was just a concerned father and wanted the rightful heir for the throne, for his business. So in like today's, the relevance of today would be like any father would be he wouldn't want to give it away just to somebody who's not fit for it, right? So it's just like that, and that's for me, like, it was, that's the relevance of how in contemporary times how people perceive this.
Right.
I mean, as far as the contemporary times are concerned, like right now, any character that is etched out any character which is etched out right now in our present time shows, let's just say, are always grey.
Yeah.
Our period dramas, or let's say our historical figures that we have portrayed on screen, have mostly been about the bigger vision. It was always about conquering. It was always and they were always shown in a golden kind of a light. Whereas, let's say, like she rightly said, the story is very fresh, right? All the characters that have been, yes, there are definitely historical figures, but they've been portrayed as today's, characters with shades. They're not just black and white. Their needs, their desires, there's fears, there are complexes, there's flaws, there's insecurities, and how, like he said, a family which has so many different individuals desiring different aspects of the throne. These characters and this show portrays it in a nice, what do you call it, in a nice spectrum of colors, and that's why it's more relatable for today's audience than it's and also, I guess, the performances
Definitely.
are not what's it called, loud.
Also, I think
They're
we've
very-
really, like, I can speak that for like all of us, we've really sort of consciously made it a point that it does not go and look, because usually, like, the first thing when you get into a character, or when you get into your costume, which is prehistoric, or it's, you tend to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
a little
Over.
uptight and
Yeah.
over. But I think, thanks to our director, who also have a very unbiased vision of history, of Indian history, and portrayed it just by the way they've researched it so beautifully. So I think that's, like, really, like, hats off to them, the way they've sort of put it all together and made us believe that these are real people,
Right.
who talk normally. So yeah, that was very interesting.
Yeah, so right off the bat, when I decided to approach Daniel, it was that people are still people.
Right.
They can be born in the 1500s, 1600s, 2000s. They are basically, it's a lot to do with their childhood. It's a lot to do with what their home is like. So yeah, so the way I saw it, I just thought of it like a family. Like, I have an older brother who watches out for me. I have another brother who's a little hard on me. I have a father who's busy ruling the kingdom.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have all that time to sort of be around me. So yeah, I the way I see it, it's just another family, a way more powerful family than perhaps because these were rulers.
Right.
But yeah,
The emotions still remain the same.
yeah, the emotions are still, the beats are still the same, and yeah, that's how I see it.
So, Asim, when we see the word Salim itself, it comes with lots of responsibility, royalty, love, romance, everything.
Mhm.
So, when you got to know that you have to play Salim, what was your reaction, and how did you take the character journey?
So this was a long drawn process for me, from the very beginning, from the time I had auditioned for it. Just the fact that I got cast for it and the way it happened was a story in itself. But yeah, like, I think for me it was just, I love poetry in general. I love music. I love art. And for me, that was a very important takeaway. And the process of it was, I had to, like, involve all of that and make Salim what I did with him was just like, was create, and to listening to a lot of shairis, to listening to a lot of music of, like, that era, like, just, I was always, I would always think about Tansen, right? Like, I didn't know that Tansen would, like, be playing for Salim in the court. And I remember talking to Ajay Singh, who's translated the script into Hindi and Urdu. And I said, I want to use this particular beat of Salim, where he would be probably listening to Tansen, and going when summoned to court by Akbar, and he would have that music playing, because he's also somebody who's, like, always, he loves alcohol, he loves women, so he's like the guy who's all about, all of that. And for me to be immersed in music like that, and the kind of music that was played in that era and performed, I think that was very interesting, and that got a really interesting perspective on how I would treat Salim. So yeah, it was. I think it was an accumulation of all of that, and that just worked. I guess. I hope it did.
Aditi, we have also seen you play in characters like this, like royal characters earlier in Padmavat also, and now this is Anarkali. So, did you look up to someone before taking up this role, or was there anyone in your mind that yeah, this is my goal, or this is something like that?
I mean, when you think of Anarkali, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is Mughal
Mughal
Azam
Azam,
and
yeah.
Madhupala. And that is something that, we've just you've just always heard of that. But I feel when you get a script and when you get a character, it's about the heart and soul of that character in that story that you get. And I think every film, every script is written differently.
Yeah.
And this was also written and treated very differently. And I always feel with iconic characters, we as listeners of the story or watchers of cinema, we make those characters iconic. But the characters themselves, when they're going through their lives, they don't consider themselves iconic. So Anarkali is just a girl who is very loyal, who is actually to me, she's a very fearless girl. And she's so in love that she can deal with anything, for her love.
Yeah.
So that's how I looked at Anarkali, and I didn't sort of look at anything else other than listen to my director and have many conversations with the writer.
Right.
Because I felt that was the most important thing for me to do, and not constantly compare to what has been done before.
Right.
Because we are not making that, we're making this. Also, it is less intimidating to do that. But also I naturally also always do that. I mean, otherwise you have to breathe life into it, you have to breathe your own life into it. And I think the most important thing for anybody, for me to do on a set, is to listen to my director and just be a sponge and breathe life into their vision, in many ways. Yeah.
So, as we have all known, this is after decades that Nasir sir and Dharamji are coming together, and fans and people, everyone is very excited about that. And you all have shared screen with them. So, how was all of your experience working with them?
Not with Dharam sir.
Yeah.
None of us were born when Salim Chishti was around.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, no, he was.
yes.
Okay.
Start again.
From?
I think I
From
need
Nasir
to be a
sir's thing.
class monitor over here.
Okay, what was your experience with Nasir?
What was your
sir?
experience working with
Let's
Nasir
start
sir?
with
My experience with Nasir sir was absolutely amazing, and he's an amazing artist, and I'm still forming words as they're coming out of my mouth. But yeah, I don't have much to say. I think he's one of the most legendary personalities that we have, and he's not just. For me, it was more about the person that he was than the actor that he was. We all know him to be a great actor, but normally they say there's a saying that never meet your idols. But in this case, that's not true, because I think he's a stellar human being. He's so warm, and he's so it's like an institution. Like when he's talking, it's like a mental notepad on hota hai, and we're just making notes ki acha agle job mein ye sab cheezon ka dhyan rakhna hai. So yeah, that was my experience.
Tell now, say the real experience. What were you with Nasir sir?
Oh, he's
I was his in my head, I was his ardhangini.
Oh.
Every
He completes
interview, new
me.
word is coming.
He completes me. And yeah.
We, like she said, we didn't. At least I didn't get to work with Dharam sir at all. It was great sharing stage with him though the previous night. Besides that, I guess growing up, I've always seen a lot of commercial films and not the parallel cinema. But once I started acting and started studying acting, everybody always talked about Nasir sir.
Yeah.
And then you start studying his films. And I guess over the time when I actually did come face to face with him, he wasn't a very. I didn't feel scared or nervous. He was very calm. He was very
Patient.
present.
Okay.
He was very into his script, to be very honest. He was sitting on the throne and he'd be lying back and he'd hold his script up here and he would just be doing his lines over and over and over again. I would never disturb him, but I would always I would always, when you have, like he said, your idol in front of you, your eye just tends to go where they are. What are they doing? So when that happens, I've always seen him dedicated to his craft.
Right.
He is always going through his script. If I was in Jodhpur, we were shooting. There was a time when we were all just sitting down, and he joins us, and he's like, let's just do lines, so that we're all aware of what's happening. So of course you're going to learn from a legend, you're going to soak up his energy. But I guess most of all, for me, the biggest gift, we recently had a screening where we watched the first episode, and after the screening I went up to him, and he hugged me and he gave me a kiss.
Okay.
And that was my award. Like, I'll never forget that. So I guess that's the kind of human being he is. He's not trying to show anything. He's not trying to project how big he is, how great he is. He appreciates other people's try, or the koshish jo hum log kar rahe hain.
And he never dismisses your ideas.
Yeah.
Like even no matter how it's not hierarchical. It's not that okay, you go up to him with an idea and he's just going to be like, you know what, like no, like I'm not even going to hear him out. He'll sort of tell you no if he feels that it's not a good idea, because to impress him we actually take a lot of ideas.
Yeah.
I'm talking about myself. So a lot of times he would say no, but he would at least hear it out, and like then you could actually see him going into that thought that okay, will this work, will this not work, and then I captain.
So when we talk about all of your roles specifically, there have been a lot of intricacies detailing to it. So what was that one challenging thing you all felt that this is the most challenging part you had to do?
I think for me, I mean, physically, I'd say like the whole entire war sequence, because it's very intricately like shot. It's been extensively shown, and for us that physically that was a challenge. I think emotionally, the kind of beats that I had with my brothers, with my father, I think that's something that I don't connect with in real life.
Okay.
So that was something that I had to like sort of train myself, or even just to think about how it would be, and just make it seem organic, I guess. So that was a bit of a challenge, but I think I sort of weaved into it as I went along. So it wasn't very challenging, but yeah, I had my moments.
Right.
I felt a lot of people have a notion of anarkali, which is very correct, of course. And Ron himself, our director himself, and the writers, they would always describe her to me as a tragic heroine.
Okay.
Which is true. But I felt what was very important for me to not only tell them but also bring out is that yes, she is a tragic heroine. Yes, she is vulnerable. But I think one of the most important things is that she has agency. A lot of her life is not in her control, but what is in her control is the fact that she chooses loyalty and love. She chooses to be fearless, and she chooses to stand by her love despite any punishment that she gets. And that is her agency, and that is her fearlessness, and that is what to me makes her very special.
Right.
And what her situation is tragic, but to her herself, she is just a fearless girl in love.
Yeah.
And I found that very incredible about her, and I really wanted that to come through for an Anarkali.
I guess the most challenging thing for me would be, so this character is written in he's very ruthless, he's very intolerant, he's always aggressive. Throughout the script, he's always on the edge. Anybody can just like tip him off and he's just going to explode, right? But that explosion, I think the most challenging part was to find the reason of why he is that way.
Yeah.
Shubham had mentioned that, it's all about how we grow up as we're children and things like that. Of course, all that backstory is there, but every scene, which, even if you're, let's say killing somebody in the scene, but it needs to connect with the audience in a way that what he's doing is not just because he's twisted, but it's because he has been hurt.
Yeah.
He's coming from a place of hurt, a pain that, and I think that would be the most challenging part, because I had to go back into my own life experiences and figure out all the times that I have been rejected, I have not been cheered on. I've always I felt left out. I felt the odd one in the party. Let's say, like if I'm not here, would these people really miss me? And I guess putting all those things during my years of experiences, and then kind of like narrowing it down and tunneling it into this vision and trying and finding the pain. I guess that would be the most difficult part.
So well said, yeah.
Thanks, man. Appreciate your appreciation.
That's actually very well said, bro. Because I sort of connect with the same thing, but to a different angle. So Daniel is not very connected with his half mothers, and I have two amazing, beautiful women who raised me, my mom and my mommy, and my mommy is also my mother.
The one we met?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Nice.
So for me, that was the hardest part because I'm a kid who has been raised by these two women. Like I was.
Right.
So for me to imagine that, okay, there is a boy who is not that connected to his half mothers, to find those reasons, to find that what could his childhood be like, or what was missing there that he doesn't feel that connect was actually the hardest part.
So as this is on a historic theme, and we all have preconceived notions about how history was boring, and in school days, whenever that history period used to come, we all used to be like, oh shit, it's history. So how was your experience with history as a subject during your school days?
Awful.
Seriously?
I think I just missed history classes.
Yeah.
I used to be in my school band singing, bunking classes. So yeah.
I used to enjoy history in a way when I used to watch it in cartoons.
Okay.
Right, like I'm a big fan of animation and things like that. So when I see it in that kind of a format, I feel that I understand it better. I feel I just connect to it better. As a subject, if I just have to read a book, I mean, I was bad at all subjects, to be very honest, except sports. But so yeah, I would think that history in school would have been bad, but over time I have been to so many different, like let's say I used to go to church. And in church, they would always teach us history for some reason, right? So I guess that would be very exciting because they would show us these videos that would then leave an impression on our minds. It just stuck. So I love history, but can't study it if it's in a book format.
I think I grew up with a lot of storytelling around me. Both my mother and grandmother are incredible storytellers. I didn't listen much in history class, to be very honest, because it's so much about dates and
Man, I hate dates.
kind of it becomes dry quite often. You hate dates,
No, not
I
those
don't
kind
think
of
so. I
dates.
don't think so that
Not
you
those kind of
hate dates.
No.
but it can become dry. But I might have been lucky because I had interesting people back home and a very interesting family, and a lot of stuff was told to me like a story. So anything that was told to me like a story, I remembered, and I lived this very I lived in
Created
a
your own
magical,
world, created your own
I
world.
always imagine things, and I always quite often converted stories into animation. Even today, when people talk, I convert it into
Animation. All right, great. See, I relate to
but
that.
so I like, if you look at history as just a story about people and about their emotions and what happened, it just becomes, that's what we try and do when we make a historical for you. We add so much emotion into it and intention and why people did certain things and what happened to them, and that's what makes it exciting. So yeah.
So I'll do a small, very basic history quiz with you, and let's test if that Akbar thing went.
Aashim's
Didn't
gonna
all of
win.
us tell you that we
Didn't we just say that we suck
didn't
at
listen
history?
in class?
Thank you.
Yeah, but
Chale,
it's
pooch liye.
very basic.
Damn it. Let's do Mughal chronology. We know that, no? All of us.
Yeah, that even you might have learned.
That is 100%. We came here with that.
Sab pad gaya hai.
What is the meaning of Akbar?
Sorry?
The
Meaning of Akbar.
Father.
World.
Huh?
The
Great, na? The
Yeah,
great.
the great.
Yeah.
Oh, Akbar means the great?
Yeah.
Who was the
Like
fourth
a great leader.
Mughal emperor?
Jahangir.
Jahangir.
Yeah.
So, oh.
Khud hai.
I was going to sit and count.
Yeah.
What was Anarkali's last wish before death?
Last
Anarkali's
wish
last
before death.
I don't
According to life or according to the...
According
No,
to
I don't
history,
know.
man. According to history, it's a history question.
I think it was to
To see
fly like the birds. Like to just fly.
That's her
Isn't
dream.
this-
To see Salim,
Did it not sound stupid when it's coming out
Not
of your mouth?
exactly,
What,
but yeah,
fly
to
like a
spend
moon?
time
to
with.
spend time with.
Yeah.
Bro, it's a
Wait,
metaphor,
Salim,
bro.
that
It's a
was
metaphor.
not a last
How
wish,
is it
that was her
stupid?
forever wish.
Anarkali
That is
itself
wanted
is
to
denying
like
the fact.
spend time with him as her wife.
Yeah.
Whoa, whoa,
So
whoa.
what was the
So
last
sweet,
wish?
yeah,
What was
she
the last
was
wish?
Wait, what was
To
the
be
last
with
wish?
Salim.
Spend
Basically, she
time
wanted to be
with-
his wife.
Yeah, wife.
She's like, dude, khake ye wish.
No, sweet. Arey, I'm ulta, I'm saying
You're
so
saying it's
sweet.
so sweet. Loving that.
Loyal,
She wanted to fly like a
sweet
bird,
girl.
guys, whatever.
She wanted to
Into
fly
my
like a bird.
cage.
She wanted to be like uncaged or whatever.
So, what was that one only color song in the original movie?
जब
Mughal
प्यार
The
किया तो डरना क्या जब प्यार किया. Okay.
And
You wanna dance
the
as well?
last
I don't
question,
mind,
this is
yeah.
not history, but in the first stories of Jodha Akbar and Salim Anarkali, which is your favorite love story?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
From Jodha Akbar and Salim Anarkali, which is your favorite love
Salim
story?
Anarkali.
The one we're selling, Salim and Arkan.
Salim and Anarkali is beautiful,
Beautiful, yeah.
but the Jodha Akbar that was made with Hrithik Roshan and Ash ma'am was
I mean, it was beautifully made.
beautiful.
Right.
But are you saying
Again,
which
it
is
was
the
like a
best love
retelling.
story?
Love story,
Honestly.
yeah. Like
I
in
mean, I
Salim
would
and
say
Anarkali-
Shah Jahan
But
and
wait
Mumtaz.
till you watch.
That too, yeah.
Shah Jahan and Mumtaz is the most is the most incredible love
Shameless
story.
plug-in, Manu.
It is.
I guess
it's
the
a-
most
it's a-
drama happens in Salim
That's
and
exactly
Yeah.
why I
Salim
said
Anarkali.
Salim
That's so much
Anarkali.
drama.
Hame
Oh
Salim
my
Anarkali.
god, it's so dramatic.
Please wait for that. Thank you so
Story
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
line.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Signing off, Bollywood reporter Divya Shah. For more updates, follow India Forums.